The devil hides in the details, and in the dying heart of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt, hell is about to break loose when the most ruthless crime family in the Northeast discovers that their missing 30 million is connected to a backstreet auto shop. They think they've found an easy mark, just another desperate mechanic drowning in debt, ready to break under pressure. But Ray Coleman is about to teach them the deadliest lesson of their lives. For 23 blood-soaked years, he's carried a secret that could burn their empire to ashes. Behind those grease-stained hands and weary eyes lies the mind of a man who doesn't just fix machines, he makes nightmares disappear. In his weathered garage, where the scent of motor oil mingles with gunpowder, Ray Coleman is about to prove that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a badge. It's a wrench in the hands of a man with nothing left to lose. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Thunder cracked across the Pennsylvania sky like God's own hammer against an anvil. Ray Coleman stood in the doorway of his auto shop, watching sheets of rain turn the cracked asphalt into mirrors of darkness. The neon "open" sign behind him flickered weakly, casting desperate red shadows across his weathered face. 23 years of grease and grime had carved permanent black crescents under his fingernails, marking him like the rings of a tree, each one a year of barely staying afloat. The clock on the wall ticked toward closing time, its rhythm matching the steady drip of water from a leak he couldn't afford to fix. Ray's eyes drifted to the pile of unpaid bills on his desk, their red stamps screaming "Final Notice" in a chorus of failure. The bank wanted their money, and they weren't interested in excuses about the economy or how the big franchise shops were stealing his customers. That's when he heard it, a sound that would change everything. The deep, throaty rumble of a motorcycle engine fighting against the storm. Through the curtain of rain, a single headlight cut through the darkness like a butcher's blade, heading straight for his shop. The bike that rolled in wasn't just any Harley. It was a Street Glide special, but something was off about it. The machine moved wrong, like a wounded animal trying to hide its pain. Its rider, a mountain of a man in a black leather jacket, killed the engine. The sudden silence felt like a held breath. "You're about to close," the rider said. It wasn't a question. Ray's hand instinctively moved to the wrench in his back pocket. 23 years in this neighborhood had taught him to read trouble like a manual. This man carried it with him like a passenger. "Depends on the problem," Ray answered, studying the stranger's face. Deep scars mapped stories across his features and his eyes. They were the kind that had seen the wrong end of too many guns. The rider dismounted with a grace that belied his size. "They said you're the best, the man who can fix anything." He ran a gloved hand along the bike's fuel tank. "She's got secrets that need keeping. Worth your time to listen." 100 warning bells rang in Ray's head. But when you're drowning in debt, even a lifeline made of barbed wire looks tempting. Besides, there was something about the bike that called to him. The way its custom modifications whispered of professional work, the kind that doesn't show up in any manufacturer's catalog. "Let's hear it then," Ray said, reaching for the shop door. The deadbolt clicked like the hammer of a gun. The stranger smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "First, I need to know something." He reached into his jacket and Ray's muscles tensed, but what emerged wasn't a weapon. It was a photograph, creased and worn. "Does this mean anything to you?" Ray's blood turned to ice. The photo showed a younger version of himself standing next to a pristine 1967 Chevrolet Impala. But it wasn't the car that stopped his heart. It was the man standing on the other side, Vincent the Ghost Marino, the most notorious figure in the Northeast's criminal underworld. A man who'd been dead for 15 years. "Where did you get that?" Ray's voice was barely a whisper. "Better question." The rider leaned in close, his words carrying the weight of a death sentence. "Is why the most dangerous crime family in 3 states thinks you know where they're missing 30 million. Went. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside Ray's shop, a different kind of thunder was about to break loose. After the stranger left, Ray stood alone in his shop, the Harley's presence like a loaded gun on his workbench. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over his daughter Sarah's number. She deserved to know if trouble was coming. But he couldn't drag her into this. Not yet. Not until he knew exactly what kind of grave he might be digging. The bike demanded his attention. Even sitting still, it seemed to pulse with dangerous energy. Ray had worked on thousands of motorcycles, but this one was different. The modifications were subtle, professional, the kind of work that spoke of purpose beyond mere performance. He'd seen similar handiwork 15 years ago, back when he'd been young and stupid enough to do favors, for men like Vincent Marino. "What are you hiding?" Ray muttered, reaching for his diagnostic tablet. The engine's serial number pulled up clean, too clean. Someone had scrubbed its history recently, but they hadn't counted on Ray's experience with machines that needed to disappear. As midnight crept past, Ray methodically dismantled the bike's facade. Every component told a story, if you knew how to listen. The fuel injection system had been modified, creating a hollow space that shouldn't exist. The wiring harness contained redundant circuits that served no apparent purpose. And the fuel tank. Ray ran his fingers along its seams, feeling the nearly invisible welds that suggested it had been cut apart and reassembled. His mind drifted back to that summer of '08, when Vincent Marino had first walked into his shop. Back then, Ray had been desperate enough to ignore the warning signs. A string of bad investments had left him on the verge of bankruptcy, and Marino's special projects paid well. Very well. All Ray had to do was modify certain vehicles, ask, no questions, and forget what he'd seen. The work was simple enough. Hidden compartments, reinforced suspensions, engines that could outrun anything the police had in their fleet. Ray told himself he was just fixing cars, not responsible for what people did with them afterward. That self-deception shattered the night Sarah's mother was killed in what the police called a random shooting. Nothing about Vincent Marino's world was ever random. Ray's hands moved automatically through the familiar motions of mechanical investigation, muscle memory masking the storm of memories. The deeper he dug into the Harley's guts, the more certain he became. This bike was built for more than just transportation. Every modification pointed to a larger purpose, a deadly puzzle he was afraid to solve. At 3 in the morning, he found it. Behind the voltage regulator, tucked away where no mechanic would ever look unless they knew exactly what they were searching for, was a small compartment. Inside, a folded piece of paper contained a string of numbers that made Ray's heart stop. Coordinates, dates, account numbers. The same type of code Marino had used to track his organization's most sensitive information. Ray's phone buzzed, making him jump. A text from Sarah. "Dad, why are there men watching our house?" The garage's overhead lights suddenly seemed too bright, too exposing. Ray's reflection in the chrome of the Harley showed a man caught between past and present, between the need to protect his daughter and the weight of secrets he'd thought long buried. In the distance, a police siren wailed, and Ray knew with cold certainty that his quiet life was about to explode. The question wasn't whether he'd be drawn back into the dangerous world he'd escaped. It was whether he could survive it a second time. He picked up a wrench, its familiar weight offering little comfort. Sometimes the only way to fix a problem was to strip it down to its basic components. But as Ray stared at the cryptic numbers, he wondered if some machines and some secrets were better left unopened. Ray's fingers flew across his phone's keypad. "Sarah, lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I'm coming home." He grabbed his jacket, then stopped. The coded paper seemed to burn in his pocket, but the partially dismantled Harley held secrets he couldn't leave exposed. Not with stakes this high. 20 minutes. Of frantic work restored the bike's outer facade. To any other mechanic, it would look untouched. Ray's security cameras caught nothing but rain and shadows, but every passing headlight made him flinch. The ghost of Vincent Marino seemed to hover in every corner of the garage. His ancient pickup truck protested as he gunned it through the empty streets. The numbers from the bike tumbled through his mind. 40 Degund at 26, 47, N, 79 degree 58, 36, W. A location. The date, 10/13/2008. The day after Angela, Sarah's mother, was killed. The account numbers that followed might as well have been written in blood. Sarah was waiting at the window, her face pale in the porch light. At 24, she looked more like her mother every day. She worked as an accountant now, helping Ray keep his struggling business afloat with creative bookkeeping. The ledger she clutched told him she'd been working late again. 2 men in a black SUV, she said, as he rushed her inside. They've been parked down the block for 3 hours. I recognized one of them from the shop last week. The guy asking strange questions about old repairs. Ray pulled the curtains shut. What exactly did he ask about? Mostly about restoration work from 2008, specifically cars that might have been, she hesitated, modified. The ledger in her hands fell open, revealing columns of red ink. Ray had been hiding their financial reality from her for months. But Sarah was too smart not to see the truth. The shop was 3 months behind on its loans. The bank's patience was running thinner than their checking account. Dad, what's really going on? This isn't about unpaid bills, is it? Ray pulled out the paper from the bike, spreading it on the kitchen table. I need you to look at something. These account numbers, can you trace them? Sarah's accountant. Instincts kicked in. She studied the sequence, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. These aren't just account numbers. See this pattern? It's an old code the mob used to track their money. We studied similar cases in my forensic accounting class. She looked up sharply. Dad, where did you get this? Before Ray could answer, headlights swept across the windows. The SUV was moving. Sarah's laptop lay open on the coffee table. Her banking software still running. Ray caught a glimpse of their shop's accounts. The numbers were worse than he'd imagined. The bank wasn't just threatening to foreclose. They'd already started the proceedings. Pack a bag, Ray said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. Only what you need, we might... His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The bike holds more than just coordinates, Coleman. You have 12 hours to figure it out. After that, we start taking things apart, starting with your daughter's apartment. Sarah read the message over his shoulder, her face hardening with the determination that mirrored her mother's. I'm not running, Dad. Whatever this is, whatever you're involved in, we face it together. Ray stared at the coded paper, at the date that had haunted him for 15 years. He'd tried so hard to protect Sarah from his past, but now that past was threatening to destroy everything he'd built. The coordinates pointed to an abandoned steel mill outside Pittsburgh. Whatever Vincent Marino had hidden there, it was worth killing for, and someone thought Ray knew where to find it. Dawn broke over the Rust Belt like a bruise. Ray hadn't slept, spending the night poring over old newspapers on Sarah's laptop. The story that caught his eye made his coffee turn bitter. In his mouth, local crime boss Vincent Marino found dead in warehouse fire. The article was yellowed with age, but its implications were fresh as morning dew. The shop's bell chimed at exactly 6 a.m. The mysterious rider stood in the doorway, his massive frame silhouetted against the rising sun. This time he wasn't alone. A sleek black Mercedes idled in the parking lot, its tinted windows concealing secrets like a confessional. You found something, the rider said, his voice gravel on steel. It wasn't a question. Sarah tensed beside the register, her hand sliding beneath the counter where Ray kept the old .38 special. He caught her eye, a slight shake of his head. Not yet. 15 years is a long time to keep secrets, Ray said, wiping his hands on a shop rag that had seen better days. Marino's been dead all that time. Why come asking questions now? The rider's laugh could have stripped paint. Dead? Is that what you really believe? He tossed something onto the counter, a newspaper clipping dated 3 days ago. The obituary photo showed an elderly priest in Philadelphia, but Ray recognized the eyes. They'd haunted his dreams for 15 years. Father Michael Vincent died of natural causes after 20 years of faithful service. The rider's scarred face twisted into something resembling amusement. Amazing what a man can become with a new name and a collar, but old habits die hard. The ghost kept records of everything, including where the money went. Ray's mind raced. Vincent Marino, the ghost, had been alive all this time, hiding in plain sight. The coordinates, the account numbers, the modified bikes and cars. It was all part of a bigger scheme, a dead man's insurance policy. I don't know what you think I know, Ray started, but the rider cut him off. The bike's modifications. They're your work, aren't they? From back then. He pulled out another photo. The same Impala from before, but this time the hood was up. Ray's custom engine work was clearly visible. Marino trusted you. Said you were the only one who understood both machines and silence. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. My mother's death, was it really random? The rider's expression shifted, something like genuine regret crossing his features. Ask your father about October 13th, 2008. Ask him what really happened the night Angela Coleman took a wrong turn into ghost territory. Ray's fists clenched. That night was carved into his soul with acid. He'd always suspected, but never knew for sure. Until now. The coordinates, Ray said, fighting to keep his voice steady. They lead to the old Keystone Steel Mill. Smart man, the rider nodded. You have until midnight to figure out what Marino left there. After that, he glanced at Sarah. The threat clear as crystal. Well, let's just say the ghost isn't the only one who can disappear. As the rider turned to leave, Ray called out, The bike, those modifications, they're not just for show, are they? Let's just say it's a key. And you're the only locksmith left alive who knows how to use it. The rider paused at the door. One more thing. When Detective Martinez comes asking questions, and he will, remember, cops are like tools. Some are useful, some are broken, and some, he smiled coldly, some work for the highest bidder. The Mercedes purred to life, carrying its secrets into the morning traffic. Sarah's hand found Ray's, squeezing tight. The newspaper clipping stared up at them from the counter, Father Michael Vincent's eyes holding one final secret. The game wasn't just about finding missing millions anymore. It was about survival, and Ray Coleman had just become the most valuable and hunted mechanic in Pennsylvania. The old photograph burned a hole in Ray's pocket as he paced the shop floor. In the harsh morning light, memories he'd buried, deeper than motor oil stains, began to surface. Sarah sat at his workbench, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard, diving into financial records that might give them answers. Dad, she called, her voice tight, you need to see this. Before he could reach her, the shop's door swung open. Detective James Martinez strode in like he owned the place, his cheap suit failing to hide the expensive watch on his wrist. Ray had dealt with enough corrupt cops over the years to spot one at 50 paces. Mr. Coleman, Martinez flashed his badge with practiced casualness. Interesting morning you're having. 2 visits from a mysterious biker, a black Mercedes that screams mob money, and now this. He slapped a manila folder on the counter. Crime scene photos spilled out. The Keystone Steel Mill surrounded by police tape. Security guard found a body there this morning. Someone looking for something they couldn't find. Martinez's eyes burned with calculated intensity. Ring any bells? Sarah stepped forward, but Ray's slight head shake stopped her. He knew this. Dance. Martinez wasn't here for answers. He was here to send a message. Just a mechanic, Ray said, spreading his grease-stained hands. Mills aren't really my specialty. Martinez laughed, but it didn't touch his eyes. Funny thing about mechanics, they keep records, like this one. He pulled out another photo, this one showing a younger Ray standing next to Vincent Marino's. Impala. Found it in an old case file. You did some special work back then, didn't you, Coleman? The memory hit Ray like a hammer blow. Summer of '08, Marino bringing in car after car. Each one needed to be special. Hidden compartments, reinforced suspensions, engines that could outrun devils. The money had been good, too good. But then Angela started asking questions. Ancient history, Ray managed, his throat dry. History has a way of repeating itself. Martinez ran a finger along the workbench, examining the grease. Word is, Ghost's fortune is still out there. 30 million in untraceable cash. The kind of money that makes people forget their badges, their vows, their families. The threat hung in the air like exhaust fumes. Sarah's laptop chimed, a news alert. Another priest found dead in Philadelphia, this one with ties to Father Michael Vincent. Lot of holy men meeting their maker lately, Martinez mused. Makes you wonder what secrets they took to their graves. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Coleman, that daughter of yours, she's got her mother's eyes. Shame what happened to Angela. Wrong place, wrong time, right? After Martinez left, Sarah's hands were shaking. Dad, that cop, he's working for them, isn't he? Ray pulled out the old photograph, really looking at it for the first time in years. Behind the Impala, barely visible, was a stack of metal. Cases. The same kind he'd installed in dozens of vehicle compartments. The same kind that could hold millions in cash. It was never about the bike, he realized. It's about what the bike can lead to. Marino, Ghost, he didn't just hide. His money. He created a trail only someone with my skills could follow. Sarah's laptop showed a map of the steel mill. The body they found. The article says he was clutching a wrench. Your brand of wrench. Ray's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Time's running out, Coleman. The Ghost left breadcrumbs. Follow them or watch everything you love disappear. Again, the shop's clock ticked steadily, each second burning away like fuel in a racing engine. They had until midnight to solve a 15-year-old puzzle with a corrupt cop breathing down their necks and killers watching their every move. Ray grabbed his tools. Some mechanisms needed to be stripped down to be understood. Some secrets needed to be exposed to be buried. And some debts could only be paid. In blood and chrome. The note came just after lunch, slipped under the shop's door like a death sentence. 3 words, written in elegant script. Time's running short. Underneath lay a Polaroid of Sarah at her apartment, taken that morning. She was checking her mail, unaware of the camera capturing her last moments of normalcy. Ray's hand shook as he burned the photo. The smoke curled up like accusations. Sarah watched from behind the counter, her mother's strength evident in the set of her jaw. I've found something, she said, turning her laptop to show him. Every car you modified for Marino between June and October 2008, they all made stops at 5 specific locations. The steel mill was one of them. Before Ray could respond, his phone rang. The mysterious rider's gravelly voice filled the line. Check the bike's air filter. Ray popped open the filter housing, his fingers finding a small USB drive hidden in the foam. Sarah plugged it into her laptop, and the screen filled with documents, blueprints, schedules, coordinates. A decade and a half of Ghost's operations, all pointing to something bigger. These are transport routes, Sarah whispered. Dad, look at the dates. Every major cash movement for 5 years, all connecting to the shop's windows exploded inward. Ray dove, pulling Sarah behind the counter as glass rained down. A brick lay among the shards, wrapped in another note. Last warning, bring the bike and the files to the steel mill, midnight, alone. Outside, tires screamed on asphalt. Ray caught a glimpse of the black Mercedes Martinez behind the wheel. The detective's smile was colder than February steel. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, her accountant's mind piecing together the puzzle. The money wasn't just hidden, it was divided. Each location holds a piece of the map. The bike. It's not just modified to hide things, it's modified to find them. Ray ran his hands along the Harley's frame, feeling for secrets he'd built into similar machines years ago. Every compartment, every hidden space was part of a larger code. Marino, Ghost, had turned mechanical engineering into cryptography. Your mother found out, Ray said quietly. That's why they killed her, Sarah finished. Her voice held no accusation, only cold certainty. And now they're using her death to control you. Ray's phone buzzed again. Another text, this time with a video. Security footage from Sarah's office building, time-stamped 10 minutes ago. Men in suits, carrying suspicious packages into the ventilation room. Jesus, Sarah breathed. They rigged my whole building. One call from them and we're not playing their game. Ray cut her off. He pulled out his old toolbox, the one he'd sworn never to open again. Inside, past the normal wrenches and sockets, lay the specialized tools of his darker trade. Tools. For making things disappear. You said the bike was modified to find things, he said, selecting his instruments with practiced care. Well, it works both ways. Everything I built into these machines I can take apart. Every secret they think they're using against us. He lifted the Harley's seat, revealing a maze of custom wiring. Sarah's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You're going to turn their own trap against them. Martinez, the rider, ghosts, crew. They think they know what this bike can do. Ray's hands moved with deadly purpose, rewiring connections that hadn't seen light in 15 years. They don't know what it can really do. Not when it's been properly modified. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the Rust Belt. In 6 hours, they'd have to face killers and corrupt cops at the steel mill. But this time, Ray Coleman wasn't just bringing a wrench to a gunfight. He was bringing 15 years of buried rage and a machine built for revenge. The sound of shattering glass jolted Ray awake. He dozed off at his workbench, surrounded by tools and the gutted remains of the Harley's electrical system. Sarah's scream sent him sprinting to the front of the shop. The plate glass window lay in ruins. 3 men in ski masks were already inside, their movements precise and professional. The lead figure held something that made Ray's blood freeze, Angela's old necklace, the one that had gone missing the night she died. Found this in your daughter's apartment, the man said, letting the silver chain dangle. Amazing what you find when you really tear a place apart. Sarah stood backed against the wall, her laptop clutched to her chest like a shield. Security footage played on the screen, her apartment being systematically destroyed. Every drawer emptied, every wall punched through. You're not just looking for money, are you? Ray's voice was deadly calm. This is about what Angela found, what she was going to expose. The leader laughed, the sound muffled by his mask. Smart man, always was. That's why Ghost trusted you with the modifications, but your wife, she just couldn't leave well enough alone. A phone rang, the shop's landline. Ray answered on speaker, already knowing who it was. Having fun yet, Coleman? Martinez's smug voice filled the room. Consider this a demonstration. Next time we won't just trash the apartment. Next time... Sarah's laptop chimed. Her eyes went wide as she read the screen. Dad? Father Vincent's records. They weren't just accounting ledgers. They're evidence. Decades of blackmail material. Names, dates, dirty cops. One of the masked men lunged for the laptop. Sarah swung it like a weapon, catching him in the face. Ray's wrench found another's knee with a sickening crunch. But the leader backed away, Angela's necklace still dangling from his fist. Midnight Coleman. Bring everything. The bike, the files, your tools. Or next time we visit your daughter, she joins her mother. They were gone before Ray could move, leaving behind shattered glass and bitter memories. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up more files. It's all connected, she whispered. The modified vehicles, the priest's records, Mom's death. Ghost wasn't just hiding money. He was building a failsafe, insurance against his own organization. Ray stared at the ransacked shop, at the tools scattered like broken promises. On his workbench, the Harley's dismantled electrical system lay spread out like mechanical entrails. But now, looking at the custom wiring, he saw more than just modifications. He saw a way out. Sarah, those transport routes you found, they're not just showing where the money went. They're showing where the evidence is hidden, she finished. Each location contains a piece. The steel mill, it's not just about the money. It's the central hub, Ray nodded. Everything connects there. That's why they're pushing so hard. Ghost didn't just hide his fortune, he hid the truth. About everything. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, correlating dates and locations. The USB drive, the blueprints, the modified bikes and cars. It's a web. Pull one thread, and the whole thing unravels. Ray picked up his wrench, feeling its weight. They think we're going to run, or give up, or beg. He walked to the Harley, his hands moving with deadly purpose over the exposed wiring. Each connection he modified wasn't just about mechanics anymore. It was about justice, for Angela, for Sarah, for 15 years of buried truth. No more running, he said. No more hiding. You want to check the security cameras? Sarah pulled up the feeds on her laptop. The black Mercedes was parked across the street, Martinez clearly visible behind the wheel. 2 other cars idled nearby, watching every exit. They're not even trying to hide anymore, she said. Good. Ray's smile was all edges. Because neither. Are we? Get your coat. We're going to the steel mill. It's not midnight. Exactly. He patted the Harley's fuel tank. They want to play games with mechanics and machines? Let's show them how a real engineer springs a trap. Dusk painted the Rust Belt in shades of blood and steel. Ray gunned the Harley down empty streets, Sarah following in her Honda Civic, each turn bringing them closer to the mill. His modifications to the bike had taken hours, but if he was right about Ghost's failsafe, it would be worth it. The Mercedes found them 3 blocks from the mill. Martinez didn't even try to be subtle, pulling alongside with his window down. Little early for your appointment, Coleman. Thought we'd beat the traffic. Ray kept his eyes on the road, his right hand tight on the modified throttle. One wrong move now would trigger the bike's new systems. The mill rose before them, like a metal skeleton, its abandoned towers stark against the darkening sky. The mysterious rider waited at the gate, his massive form silhouetted by portable floodlights. Behind him, 4 SUVs disgorged men with obvious bulges under their jackets. You're either brave or stupid, the rider growled as Ray killed the engine, bringing your daughter to her mother's murder scene. Sarah stepped out of her car, laptop under her arm, her voice carried across the gravel lot. Actually, I brought myself. The rider's scarred face twisted into something like respect. He gestured to one of his men, who brought forward a metal briefcase. 5 million. Cash. Walk away now. Forget everything you've seen. Start a new life somewhere warm. Ray dismounted slowly, his hands away from the bike's controls. Interesting offer, but I've got a counter-proposal. He nodded to Sarah, who turned her laptop around. The screen showed live security feeds, not just from the mill, but from churches, warehouses, and safety deposit boxes across 3 states. Every location Ghost had used to hide his empire's secrets. Dead man's switch, Ray said quietly. Ghost didn't just hide evidence in these places. He rigged them. One signal from this bike's modified transmitter, and everything goes public. Every dirty cop, every murdered witness, every dollar of blood money, including what really happened to Angela Coleman. Martinez's hand twitched toward his gun. The rider held up a hand, stopping him. "You're bluffing. Try me." Ray's fingers. He brushed the bike's starter button, modified now to trigger more than just the engine. "Ghost trusted me to build his escape routes. You really think I didn't learn a few tricks?" Sarah's laptop chimed. More files appeared. Bank records, photographs, sworn statements. 15 years of criminal empire, ready to explode into the light. 10 million, the rider countered. "And we forget about the girl." Ray laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You still don't get it. This isn't a negotiation, it's a revolution." He pulled out Angela's necklace, the real one, not the copy they'd planted in Sarah's apartment. Found this in the bike's hidden compartment, along with Ghost's last confession. The rider's face went slack. Martinez swore softly. "Here's how." "This works," Ray continued. "You let us walk away, all of us. The evidence stays buried, the money stays hidden, and you get to keep pretending you're in control. Or," Martinez's hand was on his gun now, "or I push this button and we all burn together." Ray's voice was steel on stone. "Ghost knew this day would come. Why do you think he chose a mechanic to guard his secrets? Because we know that sometimes the only way to fix a broken machine is to tear it down completely." The rider studied Ray for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. Finally he nodded to his men. "Stand down." Smart choice. Ray swung his leg back over the Harley. "Sarah," she was already walking to her car, laptop clutched tight. The feed still played. On her screen, their insurance policy against treachery. "This isn't over," Martinez called after them. "No," Ray agreed, starting the bike's engine. "It's just getting started." As they pulled away from the mill, Sarah's voice crackled through the earpiece he'd hidden in his helmet. "Dad, those security feeds, they're showing something else. Something bigger than Ghost's money." Ray smiled grimly. "Sometimes the best way to spring a trap was to let your enemies think they were springing one of their own." The midnight crowd at Denny's didn't look up when Ray and Sarah slid into a back booth. 3 hours had passed since their confrontation at the mill, but adrenaline still coursed through their veins like high-octane fuel. "Look at this," Sarah whispered, turning her laptop. The security feeds she'd accessed showed more than just Ghost storage locations. They revealed a pattern: police cars, unmarked vehicles, all converging on specific points throughout the city. "They're clearing out the evidence," Ray muttered. But something felt wrong. The movements were too organized, too precise. This wasn't a panicked cleanup. It was a coordinated operation. The bell above the door chimed. Detective Martinez walked in alone, his badge conspicuously absent from his belt. He sat down uninvited, his expensive watch catching the fluorescent light. "You really think Ghost was the one pulling the strings?" Martinez's smile was razor-thin. "The pre-stacked, the hidden money, the modified vehicles, all smoke and mirrors. There's a bigger game, Coleman. Always has been." Ray's hand tightened around his coffee cup. "Talk fast before I decide to push that button." Martinez pulled out his phone, showing them a video. Police Commissioner Douglas accepting an envelope in a darkened parking garage. Judge Harrison loading boxes into his car late at night. Mayor Williams shaking hands with figures whose faces spelled organized crime. Ghost wasn't building insurance against his own organization. Martinez said. He was building evidence against the whole damn system, every corrupt official, every dirty deal, every murder sanctioned by people with badges and gavels. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, correlating dates. The transport routes, they weren't just moving money. They were moving evidence, recording everything. Give the girl a prize. Martinez leaned back. Ghost was smart. He knew the only way to protect himself was to have dirt on everyone. But he made one mistake. He trusted a mechanic with a conscience. Angela found out, Ray said quietly. That's why she really died. Not because of Ghost, but because she was going to expose everyone. Martinez nodded. The commissioner gave the order himself. Ghost just provided the trigger man. A text lit up Ray's phone. Security footage from his shop. Men in tactical gear were tearing it apart, but their patches weren't gang colors. They were SWAT team insignias. They're not looking for money anymore, Martinez said. They're looking for Ghost's master file, the one that ties everything together. And they think you know where it is. Why are you telling us this? Sarah's voice was ice. Martinez pulled back his sleeve, revealing a wire. Because some of us got tired of being part of the machine. Ghost wasn't the only one building insurance. Our policies. Ray's mind raced. The bike's modifications, the hidden compartments, the encoded coordinates, it all served a larger purpose. Ghost hadn't just been hiding his crimes. He'd been documenting everyone else's. The steel mill, he said suddenly. It's not just a storage site. It's a broadcast center. The modifications I made to those vehicles, they weren't just for hiding. And things, they were for transmitting, Sarah finished. Every vehicle you modified is part of a network. And tonight, when we accessed those security feeds, we activated it. Ray's coffee went cold. Ghost's dead man's switch isn't just about exposing evidence. It's about exposing everyone. Martinez's phone buzzed. His face went pale. They found Ghost's body, the real one, in the mill's foundation. He's been there for 15 years since the night Angela died. Sarah's laptop chimed with new alerts. Police radio channels were exploding with activity. SWAT teams mobilizing, officials being evacuated, panic spreading through the corridors of power. We need to move, Martinez stood. They'll figure out soon that the feeds we accessed were just the tip of the iceberg. The real evidence is still out there, waiting to be triggered. Ray looked at Sarah, saw Angela's determination in her eyes. Then let's give them something to really panic about. Outside, the Harley waited in the parking lot, its modified systems humming with deadly purpose. Sometimes the only way to fight a corrupt machine was to become a better one. Back at the shop, Ray's hands moved with surgical precision over the Harley's exposed circuitry. Each wire, each connection represented a different node in Ghost's hidden network. Sarah and Martinez huddled over her laptop, mapping the spread of panic through the city's power structure. They're mobilizing everything, Martinez said, watching police channels light up. SWAT, tactical units, even calling in state police. They're scared. The mysterious rider appeared in the doorway like a shadow-given form. This time, he wasn't threatening. He was running. Blood stained his leather jacket. They're burning it all down, he gasped. Every location, every safe house. They're trying to destroy Ghost's network before it can activate. Ray didn't look up from his work. Who sent you to find me? Really? The rider slumped against a workbench. Ghost did, 15 years ago, his last order before they buried him in concrete. Find Coleman when it's time. He's the only one who can finish what we started. Sarah's laptop pinged with new alerts. Dad, they're not just destroying evidence. They're eliminating witnesses. 3 judges found dead in their homes. Commissioner Douglas's car just accidentally drove off a bridge. The whole system's eating itself, Martinez muttered. Just like Ghost planned. The rider pulled out a thumb drive, aged and worn. Ghost's last message for you, Coleman. Recorded the night before they killed him. Ray plugged it into Sarah's laptop. Ghost's face filled the screen, not the priest he became, but the man Ray had known. The man who'd seen too much. Ray, if you're watching this, they finally figured it out. The modifications weren't just about hiding money or evidence. Each vehicle you worked on is part of something bigger, a web of truth that can't be destroyed. Angela, she discovered it by accident, tried to do the right thing. I couldn't save her, but I made sure her death wouldn't be meaningless. Ray's hands stilled on the bike. Sarah touched his shoulder, steadying him. The bike is the key, Ghost continued, not just to the money or the evidence, but to the whole network. One signal, transmitted through every modified vehicle, every hidden compartment, every secret frequency. The truth about everything. Every corrupt cop, every bought judge, every murdered witness. A dead man's switch that will burn down their whole kingdom. Martinez's police radio crackled with desperate orders, SWAT teams converging, helicopters mobilizing, the city's power. Brokers scrambling like roaches in sudden light. But it has to be you, Ray, Ghost's recording continued. You built it piece by piece, not even knowing what you were creating. Only you can activate it properly. The coordinates, the accounts, the hidden files, they're all connected. One push of a button and 15 years of corruption gets exposed. To the world, Ray's modifications to the Harley were complete. Each wire now connected to a custom transmitter, ready to trigger every hidden device he'd ever installed. They're coming, Martinez warned, checking his phone. SWAT's 5 minutes. Outer tactical units right behind them. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, backing up files, securing connections. The network's ready, Dad. Every modified vehicle in the city is online, waiting for the signal. The rider checked his weapons. Ghost believed in you, Coleman. Said you were the only honest man in a city of thieves. Ray stood, wiping his hands one last time. In the distance, sirens wailed like hungry wolves. The city's corrupt heart was about to face its reckoning. Angela believed in justice, he said quietly. Ghost believed in revenge. He swung his leg over the modified Harley. I believe in the truth. The bike's engine roared to life, but it wasn't just an engine anymore. It was a key about to unlock 15 years of buried secrets. A weapon built of wires and truth. Sarah closed her laptop, ready to move. They'll try to stop us from reaching the broadcast points. Ray smiled grimly. Let them try. Sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to tear it down completely. The rider finished. Outside, the night waited. And somewhere in the city's corrupt heart, ghosts of the past were about to become very, very real. The ambush came 3 blocks from the shop. Police cruisers screamed out of side streets, forming a blockade. SWAT vehicles appeared from nowhere, surrounding them like black metal predators. But something was wrong with their formation. They weren't trying to stop them, they were herding them. Dad! Sarah's voice crackled through their helmet comms. Martinez's wire just went dead. The detective's Mercedes suddenly accelerated, cutting off their escape route. When Martinez stepped out, his smile was different. Gone was the pretense of the corrupt cop playing both sides. This was the smile of a snake about to strike. Did you really think Ghost was the only one who could plan 15 years ahead? Martinez's voice carried across the standoff. Every modification you made, every secret compartment, every hidden transmitter, we were watching, waiting, using Ghost's own network to track his failsafe. The mysterious rider gunned his engine, but police snipers appeared on rooftops. Red dots dancing across his chest. Ray's mind raced, calculating angles, possibilities, escape routes. The Harley's modified systems hummed beneath him, but Martinez's next words froze his blood. Angela figured it out first, Martinez said, enjoying the reveal. Not Ghost's evidence, our surveillance of Ghost. She was going to expose both sides. That's why she had to die. Ghost didn't give that order. I did. Ray's world tilted. The rider cursed, finally understanding. Son of a bitch. The whole thing. Ghost's priest act, the hidden money, my orders to find Coleman. It was all to flush out the network. Almost right. Martinez nodded to someone in the shadows. A figure stepped forward, and Ray's heart stopped. Commissioner Douglas, the man who'd supposedly driven off a bridge an hour ago. We needed you to activate the system, Coleman. All of it. Every hidden transmitter, every secret frequency. One big network ready to be repurposed. Sarah's voice cut through Ray's shock. Dad, the laptop's picking up new signals. They're not trying to shut down the network. They're trying to take it over, Ray finished. 15 years of modifications, of hidden compartments and secret transmitters, all built into the city's infrastructure. In the wrong hands, it wasn't just a system for exposing corruption. It was a system for controlling it. Martinez raised a radio. Kill the girl first. Make the mechanic watch. That's when Ray smiled. The Harley's engine note changed, shifting to a frequency that made windows vibrate. Every modified vehicle in a 6-block radius, including the police cruisers Ray had worked on over the years, suddenly screamed to life. "You forgot something," Ray said quietly. Ghost wasn't the only one who could plan ahead. Sarah's laptop unleashed a cascade of commands. Police radios exploded with feedback, SWAT team comms went dark, and every single vehicle Ray had ever modified began broadcasting their hidden data, not to Ghost's network, but to every news station, federal agency, and internet platform simultaneously. The rider's scarred face broke into a fierce grin. "A ghost said you'd have a backup plan, said you were too good a mechanic to not build in a failsafe to your failsafe." Martinez's triumph turned to ash as his phone exploded with alerts. Not just Ghost's evidence now, but 15 years of their own surveillance, their own orders, their own kills. "Kill them," Douglas screamed. "Kill them all." But Ray had already triggered the Harley's final modification. The EMP pulse dropped every corrupt cop's weapon, killed every hostile vehicle, and left only Ray's pre-shielded machines operating. In the sudden silence, Sarah's voice carried clearly, "Mom would be proud, Dad." Sometimes the best way to beat a rigged game was to change the rules entirely. The city became a battlefield of burning rubber and screaming engines. Martinez had a backup plan for his backup plan. A squadron of modified motorcycles roaring. Out of underground garages, their riders wearing tactical gear that hadn't been disabled by Ray's EMP. "They're running a different frequency," Sarah's voice crackled through the comm. "Military-grade tech." Ray leaned the Harley into a sharp turn, sparks flying as metal kissed asphalt. The rider followed on his own bike, providing cover as tactical. Units swarmed like angry hornets through the city streets. "The broadcast is at 90%, Sarah called out, her Civic weaving through the chaos ahead of them. "Every major network is picking up the signal. FBI, CIA, Interpol, they're all getting the files." A helicopter thundered overhead, its spotlight painting targets on the street. But this wasn't police issue. The matte black exterior and weapons systems screamed private military. Martinez's insurance policy. "Coleman!" The detective's voice boomed from the chopper's speakers. "You have no idea what you're destroying. This city runs on corruption. We just made it efficient." Ray's response was to gun the Harley's engine, pushing its modified systems to their limit. Each turn was a calculation of physics and faith, each straightaway a test of engineering versus desperation. The rider pulled alongside, shouting over the wind. "Ghost said you were good. But this is something else." 2 tactical bikes flanked them, their riders reaching for weapons. Ray's hand found the custom switch he'd installed hours earlier. The Harley's exhaust system roared, spewing a cloud of superheated oil smoke. The pursuing bikes skidded, their riders losing control. "Dad!" Sarah's urgent call cut through the chaos. "They're not just chasing us, they're heading for the broadcast points. If they shut down enough nodes, the network fails." Ray saw it now. The tactical teams were splitting up, targeting specific locations throughout the city. Each one, a place where he'd installed Ghost's modifications over the years. The truth wasn't just in the files, it was in the infrastructure itself. "Sarah, take the laptop to high ground," Ray commanded. "The old radio tower on Carter Street. If they kill the ground nodes, we need an aerial broadcast." "Like hell she's going alone," the rider growled, peeling off to follow Sarah's Civic. The helicopter swung low, its guns tracking Ray's movement. Martinez's voice carried a hint of desperation now. "Last chance, Coleman. There's still a place. For a man with your skills." Ray's answer was to activate the Harley's final modification. The bike's electrical system linked with every traffic light, every electronic billboard, every network device in range. The city itself became a conduit for Ghost's evidence. But Martinez had one last card to play. Armored SUVs crashed through storefronts, trying to box Ray into a dead end. The helicopter's spotlight fixed on him like the eye of an angry god. That's when Sarah's voice came through crystal clear. "Broadcasting from the tower, Dad. Signals gone worldwide." The rider added, "Feds just breached the commissioner's office. They're moving on every name in the files." Ray allowed himself a grim smile. The Harley's engine growled beneath him, its modified heart beating in sync with his own. One last turn, one last ride. Martinez's helicopter dropped lower, determined to end this. Its guns spun up, ready to erase 15 years of secrets with lead and fire. But Ray Coleman didn't build machines to run. He built them to win. The Harley's front wheel lifted as he gunned it straight at the helicopter. His final modification wasn't about escape, it was about justice. The bike's electromagnetic pulse had been saving its real power for this moment. Sarah's voice, so much like her mother's. "Do it, Dad. End this." The night lit up like dawn. The helicopter's wreckage burned against the night sky. Martinez's final gambit transformed into a beacon of his failure. But Ray couldn't savor the victory. Police bands were alive with chatter about tactical teams converging on the radio tower where Sarah was broadcasting. "Move!" Ray's voice crackled through the comm. "Sarah, get out of there!" "Almost done," she replied, cool under pressure. 98% of the files are uploaded. Just need to—" Her voice cut off in a burst of static. Ray gunned the Harley toward Carter Street, its modified engine screaming through gears that shouldn't exist. The rider's voice came through broken and urgent. "They breached the tower. We're falling back to—" More static. Then a new voice cut through their comms. Commissioner Douglas, somehow surviving yet again. "Really think we didn't have contingencies?" "For the contingencies, Coleman? Your daughter's laptop just became property of the state, evidence of criminal hacking, terrorism. Shame what happens to hackers in federal prison." Ray's blood ran cold, but his hands remained steady on the handlebars. He'd built more than just weapons into his modifications. He'd built escape routes. The Harley's headlight illuminated a familiar steel grate, maintenance access to the old tunnel system beneath the city. The same tunnels Ghost had used 15 years ago, the ones Ray had modified with hidden passages and emergency caches. "Sarah," he called into the comm, "remember what your mother taught you about the old service tunnels?" A burst of static then. "The Northwest Junction, got it, Dad." Ray smiled grimly. Angela hadn't just been investigating corruption, she'd been mapping escape routes, routes that now existed in their daughter's memory. The Harley roared down into darkness, Ray's modifications transforming the bike from weapon to guide. LED strips hidden years ago flickered to life, revealing a maze of tunnels and hidden doorways. "They're right behind us," the rider's voice echoed through the underground network. "Sarah's safe, but they're tracking our comms." "No," Ray replied, taking a sharp turn into a passage that shouldn't exist. "They're tracking the comms they know about." His hand found a hidden switch under the Harley's fuel tank. The bike's electrical system shifted frequencies, tapping into a ghost network he'd built beneath the official one. Angela's network. "Mum's backup." Sarah's voice came through crystal clear on the new channel. "You kept it running all these years?" She knew Sarah. She found Ghost's evidence, but she also found something bigger, something even Ghost didn't know about. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber, an old subway maintenance bay transformed into a hidden command center. Screens lined the walls, showing feeds from every camera in the city. Servers hummed in climate-controlled racks, storing 15 years of secrets. "Your mother didn't just find corruption," Ray said as Sarah and the rider joined him. "She found the source, the real power behind Martinez, behind Douglas, behind all of it." Sarah's fingers flew across a dusty console, bringing more systems online. Her eyes widened as she read through files that had waited 15 years to be discovered. "Project Ghost," she whispered. "It wasn't named after Marino. He was named after A system designed to control every aspect of the city through modified vehicles, hidden transmitters, corrupted officials. And your father, the rider added, was chosen to build it without even knowing. Ray walked to a tarp-covered shape in the corner, pulled it back to reveal Angela's old Mustang, preserved like a mechanical tomb. Inside the trunk, hidden in a compartment he'd built with his own hands, lay the final piece of evidence. They killed her because she found their endgame, Ray said quietly. Not just controlling one city, but using this network as a blueprint for others. A hidden empire of corruption, built one modified vehicle at a time. Sarah held up her laptop, still transmitting despite Douglas's claims. Then let's bring it all down. Every file, every name, every secret. Outside, sirens wailed as the city's power brokers realized their empire was crumbling. But in the underground chamber, surrounded by machines built for truth instead of deception, Ray Coleman prepared to finish what his wife had started. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead was to complete their work. The abandoned factory loomed. Before them, its rusted bones silhouetted against a sky turning grey with dawn. Ray had chosen this place for their final stand carefully. Every gear, every chain, every piece of machinery inside had been modified by his hands over the years. The whole building was one giant trap, waiting to be sprung. "They're coming," Sarah announced from behind her laptop. "Tactical teams, SWAT, private contractors, and something else. Heavy vehicles I can't identify." The rider checked his weapons. One last time. Military grade, Project Ghost's private army. Ray's hands moved across the Harley's modified controls, activating systems hidden throughout the factory. Ancient conveyor belts groaned to life. Industrial fans began their slow rotation. The building itself awakened like a mechanical beast. "Sarah, get to the control room." Ray pointed to the elevated office overlooking the main floor. "Ryder, watch her back. This ends where it began, with a mechanic and his machines." Commissioner Douglas's voice boomed through a megaphone outside. "You've got nowhere left to run, Coleman. Project Ghost goes deeper than you can imagine. Cities, states, whole regions, all connected, all controlled. Your wife died trying to expose it. Want your daughter to make the same mistake?" Ray's answer was to trigger the factory's exterior defenses. Modified sprinkler systems sprayed oil across the approach routes. Electromagnetic pulses knocked out. Tactical equipment. Every entrance became a death trap of mechanical ingenuity, but Douglas's forces had come prepared. Armored vehicles smashed through walls. Troops in shielded gear rappelled through skylights. And in the midst of it all, Martinez strode in, somehow surviving the helicopter crash, his expensive suit replaced by combat gear. "You know what your problem is, Coleman?" Martinez called out, his voice echoing off metal walls. "You're a good mechanic. Maybe the best, but you don't understand the machine you're fighting. Project Ghost isn't just a network, it's evolution. Control through technology. Order through corruption." "No," Ray replied, his voice carrying across the factory floor. "My problem is that I understand machines better than you ever will." He pressed a button on the Harley's modified console. Throughout the factory, machines surged to life. Conveyor belts became weapons, hydraulic presses turned lethal, robotic. Arms moved with deadly purpose. Each modification, each hidden system, transformed the factory into an extension of Ray's will. Sarah's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Files are still broadcasting, Dad. The whole world's watching Project Ghost fall apart. FBI's moving on their headquarters, CIA's investigating their international connections. It's over. It's never over." Douglas had entered the factory flanked by armored guards. "Project Ghost is bigger than evidence, bigger than corruption. It's power itself. The power to control everything that moves, everything that connects, everything that—" His voice cut off as Ray triggered his masterpiece. Every modified vehicle in the city, every piece of equipment he'd ever worked on, activated at once. Not to transmit evidence or secrets, but to execute one final command. Shut down the city's corrupted infrastructure ground to a halt. Project Ghost's network collapsed as each node went dark. Their tactical vehicles died, their communications failed, their weapon systems crashed. That's the thing about machines, Ray said, advancing on Douglas with a wrench in hand. They only work if you understand what they're built for. I didn't build them for control. I built them for justice. Martinez drew his gun, but the rider was faster. Sarah's voice rang out triumphantly. Broadcast complete. Every file, every name, every secret. It's all public now. Douglas made a final desperate grab for his phone, trying to activate some last-ditch protocol. Ray's wrench ended that plan with mechanical precision. Angela would be proud, the rider said quietly, surveying the disabled troops and failed machinery around them. Ghost, too. Ray looked up at the control room where Sarah stood, her mother's determination shining in her eyes. Sometimes the best way to fix a broken system wasn't to control it or destroy it. It was to set it free. Dawn broke over a changed city. Federal agents swarmed through offices and precincts, their evidence folders thick with 15 years of leaked secrets. Ray sat in his shop, surrounded by the ghosts of countless modified machines, watching the news unfold on Sarah's laptop. Project Ghost exposed, the headline screamed. Nationwide criminal enterprise revealed. Corruption network spans decades. Each story traced back to the evidence they'd broadcast. Each arrest stemmed from files Angela had died protecting. The rider appeared in the doorway, his scarred face bearing fresh bandages. You should see downtown. Feds are taking everyone, judges, politicians, cops, anybody who was part of the machine. Speaking of machines, Sarah called from the back office, you need to see this, Dad. She'd found a hidden file in Angela's old records, encrypted all these years. The security footage showed a younger Ray, working on Vincent Marino's cars, unknowingly building the foundation of Project Ghost's network. But there was something else. Angela in the background, documenting everything, protecting her husband the only way she knew how. She wasn't just gathering evidence against them, Sarah said softly. She was gathering evidence to protect you, to prove you were an unwitting part of their scheme. Martinez's confession played on another screen, the former detective singing like a mechanical canary to federal prosecutors. The truth about Angela's murder, about Ghost's real role, about how deep Project Ghost's tentacles reached. Ghost wasn't just running from them, the rider added. He was trying to expose them. That's why he chose you, Coleman. Not just because you could build their network, but because you could tear it down. Ray picked up the wrench that had finally brought Douglas down. Its weight felt different now, lighter maybe, or just more justified. Commissioner Douglas has agreed to testify, Sarah reported, scanning updates. International task forces are moving on Project Ghost's operations. In other cities, the whole network is unraveling. And the money? Ray asked quietly. Sarah smiled. Ghost's millions? Already being transferred to accounts he set up years ago. Victims' families, whistleblower protection programs, anti-corruption initiatives. He planned for everything. The shop's phone rang, their first legitimate customer in days. Life was slowly returning to normal, but nothing would ever be quite the same. The rider stood, adjusting his leather jacket. Ghost told me once that machines can't lie. They either work or they don't. Maybe that's why he trusted you, Coleman. In a world of liars, you built nothing but truth. Outside, the modified Harley waited, its secrets now part of history. The city was healing, its corrupted machinery stripped down and rebuilt, just like every vehicle that had ever rolled into Ray Coleman's garage. Sarah touched her mother's old necklace, now restored to its rightful place. Mum knew, didn't she? Even at the end, she knew you'd finish what she started. Ray looked at his hands, grease-stained, scarred, honest. Hands that had built and destroyed, fixed and broken, all in service of the truth. Your mother taught me something about machines, he said finally. They're only as good as what they're built to do. Project Ghost built them for control. We built them for justice. The rider's burner phone buzzed one last time. A message from federal witness. Protection. His work, like Ghost's, was done. As morning light filled the garage, Ray Coleman picked up his tools and got back to work. There were still machines that needed fixing, still truths that needed telling. And sometimes the best way to honor the dead was to keep building something worth living for. 3 months after Project Ghost's collapse, Ray's garage had transformed. The bullet holes were patched, the broken windows replaced, and a steady stream of honest customers kept the bays full. But the biggest change wasn't in the building, it was in the man himself. Another reporter called. Sarah announced, walking in with their morning coffee. She'd officially joined the business, her accountant's eye for detail matching perfectly with her father's mechanical genius. They want to do a follow-up story on the mechanic who broke the machine. Ray smiled, not looking up from the engine he was rebuilding. A normal engine this time. No hidden compartments, no secret transmitters, just pure mechanical truth. Tell them what we always do, he replied. The story's in the evidence, not the wrench that turned it loose. The modified Harley stood in, a place of honor near the office, retired from service, but preserved as a reminder. Ghost's network had been dismantled piece by piece, each modified vehicle either destroyed or restored to its original purpose. The city felt cleaner somehow, its machinery running on honest fuel instead of corrupted power. The door chimed and a familiar scarred face appeared. The rider, now working with federal investigators, looked different in a suit. Thought you'd want to know. Douglas took the plea deal. He's naming names all the way up the chain. Project Ghost's international operations are falling like dominoes. Sarah pulled up the latest news on her laptop. Headlines told the story. Corruption rings exposed in major cities worldwide, criminal empires crumbling, justice finally breaking. Through decades of mechanical control. Mom's files made the difference, she said quietly. Her documentation, her connections. She built the case even before she knew what she was building it for. Ray's hands paused on the engine. Angela's presence felt stronger here now, not as a ghost of vengeance, but as a force for truth. Her old desk in the office had become Sarah's command center, where daughter carried on mother's work of keeping power honest. Ghost's money did some good too, the rider added. Those victim compensation funds he set up, they're helping families all over the country. People whose lives were destroyed by the machine. They're getting a chance to rebuild. Through the open garage door, they could see the city skyline. Cranes marked where corrupt developers' projects were being torn down. New construction rose in their place. Hospitals, schools, community centers, funded by seized Project Ghost assets. Speaking of rebuilding, Sarah said, pulling out a thick envelope. The bank called. With all the civil asset forfeiture money, and coming in from the investigation plus Ghost's dedicated funds, the shop's not just paid off. We've got enough to expand. Ray wiped his hands, looking around at the garage that had been his life's work. The place where he'd unknowingly built pieces of a corrupt machine and then built the tools to break it. Every wrench, every socket, every diagnostic tool had played its part in both stories. Your mother always said this place could be more than just a garage, he said. She saw it as a way to make things right, to fix what was broken, and not just in engines. The rider nodded toward the street where a police car had pulled up. The new chief, brought in to clean up the department, needed her vehicle serviced. No modifications, no hidden systems, just honest mechanical work. That's the thing about machines, Ray said, picking up his wrench. They're only as good as the people who build them, and the people who fix them when they break. Sarah hugged him, motor oil stains and all. Outside, the city hummed with the sound of honest engines and truthful machinery. The ghost of corruption was fading, replaced by the solid reality of justice served and wrongs repaired. Sometimes the best way to honor the past was to build a better future, one honest repair at a time. 1 year to the day since the mysterious. Arlie rolled into his shop. Ray Coleman stood beneath the new sign, Coleman and Daughter Auto, honest work, fair prices. The morning sun caught the fresh paint, making it shine like chrome against the restored brick walls. The rider's motorcycle rumbled into the lot one last time. Tomorrow he'd disappear into witness protection, his testimony having helped secure convictions against Project Ghost's remaining leaders. But today, he had one final delivery to make. "Found this in Ghost's last safe house," he said, handing Ray a small package. "He meant for you to have it." Inside was a single key and a photograph. Angela, young and smiling, standing next to her Mustang. On the back, written in Ghost's hand, "Some machines run on gasoline, the best ones run on truth." Sarah emerged from the office carrying the day's paperwork. The shop was thriving now, their reputation for honest work drawing customers from across the state. More importantly, they'd started a training program, teaching young mechanics not just about engines, but about integrity. "Last of the modified vehicles is being decommissioned today," she announced. "Federal task force says that's the end of Project Ghost's network. For good this time." The rider nodded, adjusting his leather jacket one last time. Ghost would be proud. He built an empire of secrets, but you built something better, a legacy of truth. A familiar engine sound drew their attention. Martinez's old Mercedes pulled in, now driven by the federal agent who'd led the investigation. This agent had become a regular customer, claiming no one else could keep her vehicle running quite like Ray. "Funny thing about machines," Ray said, picking up his wrench. "They don't care about power or corruption or control. They just want to run right. Everything else, that's all human." Sarah touched her mother's necklace, now a symbol of justice rather than loss. "Mom used to say that fixing things was about more than just knowing how they worked. It was about caring why they broke." The rider started his bike, its honest engine a far cry from the modified monsters they'd faced that night. "Take care of yourselves, Colemans. World needs more mechanics like you." As he rode away, Ray and Sarah stood in the doorway of their shop. The tools were lined up, the bays were ready, and the morning's first customers would arrive soon. No more hidden compartments, no more secret modifications, just the simple truth of mechanical problems and honest solutions. "Ready for another a day of fixing what's broken?" Sarah asked, her smile matching her mother's in that final photograph. Ray Coleman picked up his wrench, its weight now a comfort rather than a burden. In the years since that rainy night when a mysterious bike rolled in, he'd learned that some machines couldn't be fixed with tools alone. Some needed truth, justice, and the courage to strip away corruption down to clean metal. "You know what your mother would say," he replied, stepping into the shop that had become more than just a garage. It had become a testament to doing things right. Behind them, the new sign caught the morning light, casting a shadow that looked almost like wings. Sometimes the best way to honor those who fought for truth was to keep their tools working, their engines running, and their legacy alive in every honest repair. The end.